So sportscar engineering legend, is that butter in your F? Brad Kettler. If you could describe this lunch at your home in one word, what would it be?
Appreciative for this beautiful day and you guys to come here and to share some of these stories together.
That's so damn pleasant.
You're too nice for us.
Yeah.
And now for Dinner with Racers, presented by
Continental Tire.
with your hosts, Ryan Eversley and Sean Heckman.
Placeholder radio sound. I'm a driver. I'm very angry. This is the sound of a driver on the radio during a race.
What do you think I should order?
Welcome to Dinner with Racers. I'm Ryan Eversley, alongside Sean Heckman.
Hey!
And I'm Ryan Eversley again.
We are currently sitting in a traffic jam on the 110 freeway headed to LAX to wrap up this 40-day journey that took us across 29 states and over 12,000 miles in a Honda Odyssey running a certain kind of tire.
Continental Tire.
Cross Contact LX20, all in the name of bringing you a free podcast that you've been very gracious for, although I'm sure once Season 2 comes out, you'll complain about its comparison to Season 1. However, one of the awesome things about Season 2 was our passing through an interesting city called College Corner. And I don't name the state for a very specific reason, because College Corner is somewhere between Ohio and Indiana. It actually shares both states. But within that is the legendary Brad Kettler. For those who don't know who Brad Kettler is, he's more of a behind-the-scenes guy. He's been in the sport for a very long time. He currently runs Kettler Motorwerkes, but he's most synonymous with all of the North American efforts with Audi over the last 15 or so years. And that includes all of the LMP1 programs that have run out here, all of the current Audi Sport customer racing programs. He's sort of the guy when it comes to the operation of the racing side of the business. So, but he's just a cool guy with a ton of insight.
So I've known Brad Kettler a really long time. We talk about it a little bit in the episode, but he worked for my dad back when my dad had his own big race shop years and years ago. And so we have a photo of him and I together from a Christmas card back when I think I was 6 or 7 years old. And it's neat to sit down with him and drink a beer with him and just kind of see him away from the racetrack. But what I noticed is that he's the same guy all the time. He doesn't have a racetrack Brad Kettler or a home life Brad Kettler.
So we actually didn't go out. We ate at his farm at Shea Kettler.
That's right. And I believe I had the homemade chili that his girlfriend prepared for us.
And she made me a chicken sandwich.
She did. She made one chicken sandwich for you. And the rest of us ate the chili.
Also worth noting, before we listen to Brad, at the time of this recording, the announcement had not yet been made about the closing of Audi's LMP1 program. Obviously, that would have made its way into the discussion if that was sort of official news at that point. However, since it wasn't, it doesn't come up just to sort of tell you that right now. But still, ton of cool stories. Without wasting any more time, because Brad doesn't, let's get going.
All right, we're going to start in 5, 4, 3, 2.
You can hear us okay?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Let me have you. Actually, that's probably okay. Count to 10 for me.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
Yeah,
7,
there we
8,
go.
9, 10.
Cool. Yeah, we don't do any introductions or anything. We just kind of go.
Okay.
So,
Understood.
Yeah.
Understood.
So this is what it's like to be McNish or, Christensen, getting to hear Brad on the radio.
On the radio,
Yeah.
exactly.
He's like, stop it, pit now.
Yeah. I always tried to, my radio protocol, I always tried to be very calm.
Yeah.
Even though I wasn't inside. I tried to be, very direct, very calm, not get, terribly excited and start screaming and carrying on, because it doesn't make you go any faster.
Sure. Yeah.
And it usually doesn't help the communication stream. So, I mean, the guys always liked my voice on the radio, even though they said it was quite soft.
Mm-hmm.
So in a loud environment, it doesn't carry very well. So I always had to be very careful about how I pronounced it. And I also studied a little bit radio protocol for airplane traffic and so forth. So actually at Champion, we had an approved, basically a vocabulary list of the words that we tried to always use on the radio.
Sure, for clarity.
So, for clarity. So
Right.
even if the clarity was bad or the communication was garbled or whatever, the cadence of the words
Right.
would very often paint the picture.
Right.
Because if they're standard, if the guys are used to the same response, the full service, box now, always using the same terms would help them in the event that they weren't really clear.
Right.
Like if we had a crackly,
Right.
Breakup or somebody's
the
keying the
backside of
mic.
the track
Right.
and right,
Exactly.
yeah.
Like backside at Road Atlanta.
Yeah.
You're coming out of 7 and you get some half message, but because the cadence is there and the length of the words is something you're familiar with, you connect to it, confirm it back, and it works out okay. So I listen to some of the radio protocol on some of the radios from not only just the customer teams, just the general scan in the paddock, and I'm appalled with the way some of the guys talk on it. I mean, they just don't realize how much the driver is really relying on the clear picture in his head.
Wording.
Yeah.
The specific wording, the length of it.
I can't name any Audi customer teams
That have a driver.
maybe have a driver that gets excited on the radio, an engineer. Who
Yeah,
gets
oh
used
yeah,
to it.
oh
So,
yeah, oh my God! I mean, Andy this year was hilarious to listen to.
Because you'd never really heard Andy before this year, right?
I didn't have that much exposure with Andy before this year, and I knew Lars pretty good, and he's so dry,
Yeah.
and could give a shit
he couldn't
about
care
what Andy
less.
has to say.
Right, and he's so dry and so measured in his delivery of things, and we'll check into these guy. Tell them go up to the tower. Yep, okay, Andy, we'll get right on that. And just basically give him his moment, and within a lap, he'd be back together.
You're right.
Like, okay,
Yeah.
what happened, Lars?
Yeah.
And that's if Andy was here, he would resent everything you just said.
But he knows it's true.
But it's 100% true.
It's 100% true.
He cannot stand how Lars is with him.
Yeah.
But it's because Lars knows exactly how he should deal with
they've
him.
been working together for so long.
Right.
He's like,
It's
have your
a
moment.
cool relationship.
Absolutely.
It's a cool relationship, and I give that the check and balance of that relationship really a lot of credit, because I've been lucky enough to work with a couple of guys that I got that close to, that I could be that direct with, like JJ, for example.
Sure.
And JJ is
This is JJ Leto.
JJ Leto.
Yeah.
JJ was absolutely a blast to work with, but really hard to handle sometimes.
Okay.
He was tough. He's really aggressive. You really had to kind of bring him in off the ledge once in a while, because he was his own worst enemy when he got too spooled up. I mean, he would still drive within his limits, but then he would start calculating some sort of retribution or some kind of thing, and you just had to kind of steer him off of that path.
Right.
And he's also hard-headed Type A Scandinavian guy, and very difficult to convince he was wrong, or to change, to try to something different. And but I enjoyed working with him. But I got to the point where I could shout him down. I said, JJ, that's bullshit. We're not doing that.
Yeah.
Right.
This is the program you got. This is what you got to work with. Marco's sticking. I mean, I would play with him a little bit. I said, Marco's sad. His lip's sticking out, because you're unhappy in the car. I said, you're hurting all of us here. Just get your head back in it and get going. And he would. So I rate Andy the same way. I mean, you see him come apart, but then the next lap, he's like, okay, Lars, where are we?
Yeah,
what's going on?
exactly.
And then he's heads back down. The car was delivered here, I'm going to say late November, early December last year. And we PDI'd it right away. The team came out.
For people who don't know what PDI is.
Pre-delivery inspection.
Right.
We check the car. When the cars come into the country, we pick them up in Atlanta. We bring them up here. We basically take all the panels off and just double check everything's tight. All the embedded equipment's the way it needs to be. And we do a basic setup on the car and a function check, so that when the customers get them, they're basically turnkey deals. And fortunately, the team came out, which we highly encourage. The team came out. We went through the setup together. We drank a couple beers with the team in the shop.
Magnus?
Yeah, yeah.
Weird. They drink?
And, and
the team that Lars runs?
Yeah. And so we got to know each other a little bit.
Yeah.
They left our shop. They went directly to Sebring. They had a totally successful 2-day test. And Andy emailed me back right away afterward. He says, I absolutely love this car.
Yeah.
He says, I love this thing, and I'm going to get my head around it completely with a little bit more time.
Right.
And the time he spent talking with Renee about the car, about
Renee
how to
Rast.
drive it, how to place it, how to use it, how to save fuel in it, was a great cross communication between Rene and Andy. Those guys really worked on, winning that race this year was really a function.
About Daytona.
Daytona,
Right.
Winning Daytona this year was really a function of the fuel economy of the final 2 stints and what that meant. And that so much of that was practiced from what Rene learned in the simulator back home in Ingolstadt and what he was able to share with Andy and so forth. And then ultimately Rene's final stint in the car where he saved all the fuel, ran everybody else out of fuel and beat them. And
cool.
it was well played.
Yeah.
The whole team played it really well, and I have a lot of time for Andy. I have a lot of time for Lars, and I like John as an owner, John Potter. And but I like Lars because he's clever, and he's dry and calculating, sarcastic, and very, very smart guy. And he's in control. He's, jumping around here a little bit, but one of my things with Yost that I have done so long, and I still do, although not as actively, is help finish young engineers.
Yeah.
And it's in particular people, first-timers at Le Mans.
Right.
So they put me in the team with them so that I can elbow them at the right time and say, hey, don't forget. To do this, don't forget to do that, or I'll handle this for you, or this guy at Scrutineering is always a pain in the ass about gurneys. Let me go talk to him. These kinds of things. It's kind of to help the young engineers not feel like they're just drinking from the fire hose.
Right.
And that's been a long time thing I've really enjoyed doing. And one of the things that I always tell young, and of course by the time you're at Yost and you're first timer, you're already pretty good. But one of the things I always tell young would-be engineers is you need to be a leader. You have to lead.
Yep.
And your engineering skills at some point during the competition take a back seat to your leadership skills.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you have to be able to play both roles, and you have to be able to play them convincingly. In my opinion, and it's changing now the way it's done, but in my day I would say it was 60% leadership, 40% engineering. And then at some point, when you have so many people under you and below you feeding you stuff and things to make decisions with, the leadership becomes even more important.
Right.
The leadership aspect. And I mean, I'm very proud of Kyle Wilson Clark. He was my data guy at Le Mans in 09. It was his first Le Mans, right? Now he was the winning engineer last year.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm very, very proud of him.
That's cool.
Because he was my data guy, then he was my assistant.
Yeah.
And then when he actually got the opportunity to be a lead engineer, I really supported him and pushed him hard to get up in there in that position. And then ultimately, he got poached by Porsche, and he's got a lifetime job there.
Yeah.
He's set.
Yeah.
He's set. He's
That's
good.
awesome.
He's good to go. Fantastic guy though, and a natural born leader.
Yeah. Right.
That's
a big part of it.
Big part of it. He's got a very commanding presence, got a very commanding voice, and the kind of person that has the composure to really keep it together when it's not quite working.
Right.
And and I'm very, very proud of him, and Lena as well, and Justin.
What makes a leader in this kind of environment?
He said it. Commanding voice.
Commanding.
That's it.
No, it's more than a commanding
Tall.
voice.
Paying attention.
Be tall.
It's you have to you have to be the first one to step up for the accountability of it.
Yeah.
You have to be the first.
it on the
You have
chin.
to be the first person, even if it's the tire guy that screwed it up, or it's the signal guy put the wrong damn number out, or whatever. You're the first. No, you're the sharp end of the boat, and you gotta accept that. When you accept that and take it on the chin, even though the people in the team may know that they are the ones that have actually dropped the ball, they'll respect you.
Yeah. And it makes them want to work with you.
You don't turn around and say, no, he did it. Whatever.
Right.
No, you got to say, no, it was a team thing. We screwed it up. Whatever. I accept the responsibility for it. And it's hard. I mean, it really is hard. I mean, the press is hard on you, and your owners are hard on you, and every decision gets really heavy duty analyzed. And when you're a race engineer, there's almost nothing you can do that's right. You can almost do everything wrong.
Sure.
And those are the things that people are going to remember. Those are the ones they very seldom say, oh man, Sebring 05 when you guys made that short fill, that was a brilliant. You never hear that again.
Right,
You always say, I remember when you screwed up that
Yeah.
yellow and didn't and I'm like,
Right.
yeah, I remember that too.
One of the common themes that we learned last year from people like yourself in the industry, but also drivers, the common advice was be likable. How important is being likable as a young engineer coming into it that helps you long term?
It's pretty important. I think, as a young engineer coming in, one of the, people who want to be engineers do it because they're, socially inadequate and they have, they're awkward and so forth. So they want to be,
yes,
they have the knack, but that's the only thing that that's the only thing that they really got.
Yeah.
So therefore their skill set, their ability to do analytics, their ability to digest large amounts of data and come up with a conclusion and so forth is their pride. That's where they're proud of. That's where they got their GPA. That's where their parents spent their money so they could learn it and so forth. So they want to come in and really present that. And very often they're very bristly. They're very, they want to show you how much they know in the first 10 minutes.
Sure.
Yeah,
and
right.
very often it just doesn't work like that. You're more, what you'll find is that when a young engineer comes in, if he's the kind of guy that helps you drag the tent bag out of the back and unzip it and put the tent up, this is the guy you want on the team.
Yeah.
Right? Nobody really gives a about how many Excel spreadsheets he can produce in a day. If he's the kind of guy that'll have a beer with the boys, that'll keep a good sense of humor, help you put the tent up, take the tent down, whatever. Just to be part of the group
and
to be in the team and be likable and be part of the team. That's a really important aspect because as soon as you don't do that stuff, when you're like seen at a high enough point where that's not necessary or whatever, it really creates a divide. And then if you have a controversial direction you want to go or whatever, you automatically alienate part of the team.
Right, exactly.
They're like, well, he doesn't want to do this and that, and he's got some cockamamie brake pressure he wants to do and whatever, and I'm not so sure about this new guy, and that's how it starts.
Yeah. Well, and so for that 20-year-old SAE student, one of the most common mistakes you can see, I would assume, is that need to go for the glory and be the hero. And even though you're maybe not at that point in your career. So how quickly do those guys kind of talk themselves out of a job?
Well, they do it really quick. I mean, they try to climb too fast, and I mean that just doesn't. From my experience, is based on a long, hard slog of trying to get there and being very dedicated to it over a long period of time. And I think a lot of the young guys that come into this, they want to get there, like you said, John. They want to get there too quick, and they don't realize that it's 15 times loading and unloading this truck.
Right.
And all that, and not screwing any of the basic stuff up.
Yeah.
And then maybe you might have a chance. At doing something that's cool. Get your picture in the paper or get as seen on TV from behind the podium. You'll get your mom will see you or something, and that's what you're looking for. But if you just go in looking for that, this is the wrong kind of job. Because I can't imagine a harder way to make a living in some ways. Over a long period of time than this is. It's my travel schedule's been 220 plus days for knocking on 30 years. Well, 30 years now. In the beginning, I drove the truck. I built the gearboxes. I did. I mean, the same story all the old timers tell, but it's true,
right?
Because that's what we did. We didn't have this cast of thousands of people, and we all had to do all these different. Had to do all these different things.
You had to load it on the dinosaur.
You did.
Yeah.
You had to feed the dinosaur.
Exactly.
Clean his hoofs. And get him going. But I mean, I drove the truck in programs. I still have CDL. I still do it. And I still like to keep my skills, sharp so I can do it. And I've never let a truck driver hold me hostage. If somebody does, I don't like what they're doing, get out. I'll do it. And I've done it before.
Alan McNish had a quote about you that he said when he first started working with you. The quote was, he stopped the car, he engineered it, he worked on it, he even drove the truck. The only thing he didn't do was the catering. And then I noticed that Kelly prepared lunch today too. So do you just not cook?
Oh no, I cook a lot.
Okay.
I cook a lot. She actually bailed me out today because I was a little bit behind last night. We were really late.
So before we showed up here, Ryan and I just took a tour of, I'm going to call it Campus Kettler. You've got like 17 buildings all across,
I have 8.
Okay.
There's actually 8. There's actually 8 of them.
That's still a big number.
Yeah, it feels like more because of all the doors and all the Silence of the Lamb hallways and stuff.
Right.
Sean, how many buildings do you have?
I have a room that I split in a house in Pasadena. So
I have a laptop.
But okay, so you've got 8 buildings kind of spread across College Corner.
No big deal.
And but here there was a because you and I don't know each other that well, but there's a relatability between the two of us, even though we're sort of slightly different worlds. And Ryan picked up on it right away. Is that your business? We know you for being sort of the Audi racing guy here in the U.S., but there's a million cars that you're restoring. You've even got old prototypes that you're restoring for different customers from the LMP days. And every story, as you walked us through, every story was like, yeah, this is the Cadillac we're working on. This is the the old R8 rear diff that we're working on.
I'm working on.
Yeah, but it always ended with, yeah, I'm kind of the only guy that knows how to do this. So I tried to spend a couple hours here, and it's like, holy shit, this is the racing version of me, because like you do have a staff, but it seems like you're still kind of.
I gotta have my hands.
You have to kind of do all of it, and is it really just that you're the only guy that knows how to do half of this stuff?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm really lucky. I have one of my old #1 mechanics, Bobby Green. You guys may know.
I know Bobby. Yeah.
Bobby comes up and he guest wrenches up here several weeks a year, and he really helps me with some of the old stuff because he knows it quite good, and that's really helpful because that allows me to keep my business rolling, because I can have him up here for a week and give him a component to build or to put together, and I don't have to check it.
Yeah,
I mean, he knows what he's doing, so it's either him doing that stuff or me.
Right.
And so, therefore I stay really involved in it, and from that point of view. And like you saw that one Porsche on the lift there, I still just want to do that. Right. I still want.
I get it.
I get a kick out of putting those things together. I love air cooleds.
Right.
I spent most of my life working on them up until the Audi days. And I really still want to keep my skills sharp, because I figure when I'm done here on really traveling and doing stuff that I'll still do some of that.
Sure. Here's the thing I can't wrap my head around. So Kettler Motorwerkes, it's everybody knows it for Audi's North American racing program. You still are involved with Europe quite a bit. You also work on any sort of Audi vintage program that's going on. Somebody's doing some vintage racing with an old LMP1 car. You've got your hands in that, and then you've got all these other classic cars, everything from old 1930s Fords to old Porsches and whatnot. But yet you're traveling 230 days a year with the IMSA schedule, all the testing, all that sort of stuff. So just relating on my own kind of world,
and World Challenge.
And World Challenge. Yeah. So, I'm thinking about my world with videos and websites and press stuff.
Let's make this about you.
Yeah. You wake up, absolutely. I'm guessing you wake up with a list of, I got to put 2 hours into this car. I got to rebuild this gearbox. Here's my 12 things I've got to do. But you're also like the front office guy too here. So what happens when you've got those 12 things, and then some big customer calls angry, and now you have to babysit for 4 hours on the phone for whatever dilemma?
I just work late.
Sure.
I just work late.
Yeah.
Just hours.
It's just hours.
Just working hard.
You try to adapt to those things the very best you can. But I mean, I kind of live in what I do.
Right.
I mean, I'm detached out here. This 2.5 miles from the workshop here where we're sitting. It's like a million miles away.
Yeah.
I try to keep it that way in a frame of reference where I can turn it off a little bit, but it's still very, very difficult to do. But when things like that happen, we just work more. And like I said in the car, we were talking a little bit. We're really fortunate that we have a really stout group of subcontract people. And when I really got to push hard, when I really got to crack the whip and get something done, can draw from a lot of resources.
Yeah.
Right.
And given a week or 10 days to spool up for a project, even if it's a big one, if it's a big test, something completely unannounced or whatever, we're really fortunate as a company that we can pull from those.
Is there a spider on me? There was a second
Is
ago.
There might be.
I don't see it.
I don't know where he went.
Oh,
You got a ladybug on
I
you.
got a ladybug on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Might be a nice time to talk about where we are.
Yeah.
We're at Kettler Farms.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
We're at the Seldom Rest Farm.
Seldom Rest Farm.
Seldom Rest
Yeah.
Farm. That was my dad's name for his place.
Yeah.
And he's gone now, and that place has been sold, so I call it the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll post a picture on the website, but when you imagine what a postcard from Indiana looks like, this is pretty much it. We're sitting in your back patio here.
We can probably see about 3 miles radius to a tree line of farmland, and it's super quiet. Which this is the first time I think we've sat outside and recorded one of these where there was no ambient.
Yeah, police sirens.
We actually when we interviewed Patrick Long, we were on top of the dais coffee shop, motorcycle shop in Santa
Venice,
Monica,
yeah.
Venice, and literally there's like sirens going by. We can see homeless people
homeless
fighting.
people getting
Oh,
up,
thank you.
right, yeah.
So yeah, it was pretty
Well,
different from this.
I actually went to see Jackson, my farmer, that takes care of this, and
Yeah.
I said, I went to see him yesterday, and I said, when you plan on pulling those beans out? And because I just knew he was going to tell me, oh, Saturday morning about 10 o'clock, we'll be out there with the combine. And I was like,
That's how it works. with us,
that's the
absolutely.
last thing we need right now is
Like,
a
good.
14-row turbo diesel harvester out there with a big cloud of dust flying off
Like,
of it.
I got 2 guys coming to help. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Sean,
So-
get in there.
He said no, not till Monday, and I
Nice.
said okay,
All right,
good,
we're all right.
good.
So you just came off you were in a road accident, like a road car accident?
Yeah, I was in May, was it? April. It was in April. I was headed to Barber Motorsport Park, normal pedestrian day traveling,
Right.
you know.
Rental
no-
car?
Rental car.
Oh.
Nothing special.
Yeah.
I went to Avis, got my car, and like I normally don't do, I told a couple people this, I actually hooked up my Bluetooth, I set my nav, and I did everything before I left the parking space.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
I usually prefer to do that while I'm in the spiral going down the
Right.
Yep.
going onto the interstate.
Yep.
You know, you come out of the place and you got like 8 choices.
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't know which one it is, and
Wow.
then you end up
We
going the wrong
are
way.
more similar than I ever knew, you and I.
So I
Well,
said,
Brad's successful.
I'm
Oh,
not,
yeah, he made money.
I'm not. Well, we're not sure about that. So I was like, I'm not going to do this time. I know where I'm going, but I'm going to do this, and I'm going to hook it all up. So I hooked it all up, and I was like, okay, we're good to go. And then half an hour later, I was in a really hard shutdown where the traffic stopped,
Uh-huh.
and then there was a big, shiny, black QX65 that knocked me into next week
Oh,
Really?
and hit me at about 50 miles an hour from
Oh,
behind
wow.
Jesus.
and shoved me
Did
into
you see it coming?
I did.
Yeah,
And
that's
shoved,
the worst.
Shoved,
Yeah.
shoved me into the car in front, which was a pickup truck full of bags of cement. So it was like
wow.
the worst possible scenario. It had a big
Yeah.
construction bumper on
Right.
it. I kind of went under it. Airbags went off.
Yeah.
Car did its thing.
Right.
Folded up. Energy dispersed. Bags went off. Sound I never want to hear again.
That's the
I'm
worst.
Yeah.
familiar with ballistics. I'm familiar with shotguns.
Yeah.
It sounded like a shotgun in a closet.
Yeah, right.
That's what it sounded like.
Right.
I broke my chest bone. So
Right.
excruciating pain in my chest. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't catch my breath. And of course, then it rained. So I standing
Oh, you had to stand there.
in the
Yeah.
rain, waiting for the emergency response vehicles, which were dealing with heroin overdoses. So they were almost an hour getting to me
Oh, wow.
to take me to the hospital in Cobb County in Georgia there.
Yeah.
And everybody kept saying, "Oh, you just got your wind knocked out of you. You just got your." I'm like, this really. I played hockey in college, and stuff. I'm
not
used
okay.
to getting the
Yeah.
wind
Yeah.
knocked
Yeah,
out of
yeah,
me.
this is
This
something.
is not the wind knocked out of me. And then they finally X-rayed me, and they said, "Wow, you have a broken chest bone."
No, weird.
I said, "Yeah, then maybe that's why I can't fucking breathe. Help me out here." And so it was a bad scenario. Nobody got hurt besides me. Car did its job, and everybody was okay after that. But it was a long, drawn-out summer. I was really hurt. I
Yeah,
couldn't do
right.
anything. I'm a very action guy. I climb ladders. I drive tractors. I do all kinds of stuff every day, and I'm like, I couldn't do any of it.
Well, that's what, from your business standpoint, since you are so hands-on, like how did that slow things down?
It did. It
Yeah.
stopped it. I
Yeah.
couldn't do anything. You
Yeah.
can ask her. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't. This was a challenge. So drinking was a challenge. So
That
I mean,
must have really hurt.
it did. I mean, there wasn't really anything I could do. I mean, everything caused pain, whether it was watching TV or laughing or
Right.
burping or having a sneeze or.
Right.
So I couldn't go to Le Mans. I had to wave off. I waved off on that at the very end. It killed me to do it, but it was absolutely the right call. I just had to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I just knew in my heart I wasn't strong enough, and the last thing I wanted to do is go over there and end up in the infirmary.
Yeah.
And
The good thing is, obviously, this wasn't the best year for Audi, so now you can be like, see,
Yeah.
I
Well,
wasn't
they
there.
all-
Yes.
you know?
they all
Could've-
chimed.
could've
I was
fixed it.
there. Yeah.
They all chimed in on it, and I know we tabled the Lena thing, but Lena and I we did the secret squirrel handshake, and she's like, "This is my last one.
Right.
And I want you on the team, and we'll go win it again, because we won twice together, 2 in a row actually, and then we won the Silverstone race this year and got DQ'd because of the plank wear.
Yeah.
So her and I were on that car together again. So it was all working.
Yeah.
It was all clicking. It was all
Right.
working, and we were like looking at it like, okay, this is our last opportunity to do this.
Right.
And I was really looking forward to it. And it was a near miss. Didn't go.
It's kind of funny. Two things just happened right there. One is you didn't like say, and it was really bad and I just didn't feel like I could, you basically just said what happened. And then at the exact same time, you told the story about the Audi being DQ'd and you didn't give us any bullshit on it.
Yeah.
You go, and here's the deal. Like, it was a totally, you're just like, yeah, we got DQ'd. Like, you just call it as it is. No sympathy. No, guys, can you send prayers for me today?
Right,
whatever. And I didn't know the actual details, so we looked up the racer. There was a racer article on it, and this kind of made us laugh that the racer article was like Kettler to miss Le Mans due to injury or whatever, and it's just a very basic, like, was in a car accident, so I'm going to be at home, can't go to Le Mans. And there was no racer comments on the thread.
Zero.
Which
Yeah.
as you probably don't know because you actually work and don't
right.
give a shit about this, but most racer articles comment section tends to be just awful, stupid comments. And you didn't have any comments on your thread. We're like, man, Kettler's got it made.
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
because
the fans will pick apart anything on a forum to shed their expertise.
Except
for Brad
Kettler's
Kettler
injuries.
injuries.
Except typical Kettler.
Well, probably because
Breaking his sternum.
it was so matter of fact. Like, he got hurt, he's fine.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I got
I
hurt.
was just
Oh,
showing off,
Kettler.
yeah.
The joke that we were kind of thinking was like, there's a fan somewhere. I don't know if fan's the right word, but there's like an angry, internet troll that's like, I don't know how to rip on this.
Right.
I don't know how to complain.
It's just exactly like it was.
Yeah, he was in an accident. He's getting better.
Now, I will say
Durr.
that we read through some of the there's obviously a lot going on in sports cars right now, and we read through some of the forums yesterday, and the forums have calmed down quite a bit from this time
We're
last
claiming
year.
that we did it.
We did that.
We fixed because we called it out on this podcast.
Yeah.
That we didn't
So people
think
are
it was
afraid of
listed.
getting ripped on by us.
So
now.
our question to you is, how can we fix something for you through this podcast? Like, what do you need taken care of?
Oh man, I'm gonna have to give that a minute. and
We
make
have
sure
that
I
kind of power
yeah,
now.
we-
pull up
we-
the right
season,
secret.
Season 2.
season 2.
Yeah.
We're totally not ahead of ourselves at all.
Or do
on
you have
this.
some competition you need to get rid of, and we
Yeah.
can bag on them here?
Yeah.
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 Yeah. We could do that.
This guy's starting an Audi shop. He's terrible.
All right.
Let me tell you about how awful Riley Technologies is.
Actually, I like Bill. I mean, he's
right here
he's
with
the
us.
worst.
He's
Yeah.
laying down.
He's laying down right
I didn't
now.
know he's down on the
He
job.
fell. He totally fell.
He's fun to compete with, even though you want to kill him sometimes.
Oh, really?
Sure.
You know, I like how spun up Alvin gets over him.
Oh.
We
Yeah.
didn't. Okay.
We didn't know there was a
let's
rivalry.
Go. Let's
Yeah.
go. Come on.
Alvin gets.
This is
wound-
Alvin Springer
Alvin
of
Springer.
Porsche.
Alvin
Yeah.
gets wound up because when Bill is seen as complaining too much, it bothers him. It bothers Alvin. It's like, why does he complain so much? And so
We got to blow this up.
We're gonna make a thing.
We got to make this a real
versus
Springer.
Riley.
Yeah.
Riley.
Yeah. Yes, versus Riley.
If only we knew that before, we could have tried to get him on the video.
Yeah.
And
Well, they like each
just going,
other,
no.
Yeah.
I'm
well,
not saying
Springer's
it.
never doing anything we ask.
They like each other, but Alvin, it's one of those little points. He doesn't like take off on a lot of them, but one of those little points that just boom, Bill can kind of hit the spot and and get him to go, because this is stemmed from the BOP calls this year, which is the forum where we all get a chance to say something and so forth. And obviously the outlier many times this year, I wouldn't say always, but many times this year has been the Viper.
Sure.
And for obvious reasons.
A lot, yeah.
And you got, on one hand, you got to respect what they're trying to do with it. It's an aging car and it's last year, and they're trying to play every possible hand they can with it to protect the performance of it, to have something to go with at the end of the year, which they did.
Yeah.
The car was legitimate, or winner, I don't know how you call it, of Petit Le Mans. I don't really know what you'd call that.
Crossed the line second.
It
but
crossed the
declared
line
winner.
second, but was
Yeah.
declared the winner.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and then that held, unlike our Daytona 2014, where we crossed the line second, and then we were the winner for 5 hours.
Right.
And then we weren't. So,
Same organization?
same organization, believe it or not.
Where
And,
are we going with this?
and oddly enough, some of the same mistakes were made at that point. I mean, I find it amazing, but yeah, I mean,
We're okay, we got something else to go back to.
yeah. There's some there's some stuff there. I mean, that's been a tough tough thing.
As a guy that was a mechanic for a long time and like an all-around, engineer, the whole thing. But now you're on the manufacturer representative side, so you wield a bit of power. So is it comforting that you can make people uncomfortable that their job used to be to make you uncomfortable?
Oh yeah.
Like you can be like, I really don't think I should bring that car here this year because I would be way worse than you are.
Well, I try to do it fairly quietly.
Right.
And I mean, not to put the company hat on here, but when we make our recommendations, when we make our
For
balance
things like homologation and BOP.
right, recommendations. So after every event, there's generally a call, and it's usually Tuesday or Wednesday the week following.
So just so everyone understands what this means, after every race, all of the GT3 manufacturers involved in IMSA get on literally a post-race phone call
every week.
12 times a year to talk about here's who was uneven here, here's who was uneven here. We need this, we need that, right?
Correct.
Okay, so go on.
And so what we do is we create a completely data-driven. We do a 2-part deal here, and I believe we do a really, really good job at it. And I'll say compared to the other manufacturers, I'd say we do a better job. I'll just straight out call them out on that.
Fair enough.
We do a better job at it, and some of
provide
the manufacturers
data-driven analytics
don't provide anything.
Yeah.
Right.
They get on the call and they give some opinion, and that's it. So, Porsche creates a report, and I know Alvin does a report. He's the deliverer of the report.
Sure.
So you get him delivering the data report, which is a pretty potent combination.
Right.
Because he's a very potent politician.
Right.
He's very hard to argue with. He fights his corner really well. And I owe a lot to Alvin. Alvin's done a tremendous amount for me. I wouldn't have ever gotten to do a lot of the things that I did without him backing me and being tough love on me.
Sure.
Kicking my ass when I need it. Being disappointed at the point where I disappointed him. And I believe he put a little bit more time into me than he did a lot of other people, and I really respect that. So they do a good job delivering a report, and we do a good job delivering a report. Now, Cody Ragone, my staff engineer, his job is to take the race out of context of the race and just do the numbers.
Yeah.
Right? And then what he delivers is his analytical view of what happened just purely numbers-wise.
Right.
And then I deliver the racecraft part.
Yeah.
Right.
This is the raceability of these cars. This is how we see that, although the theoretical on the 488 is here, the raceability aspect is here. So you get kind of the words and music together.
Yeah.
Cody writes the music and I put the words in, or however you want to analyze that. And then so I'm the one delivering it, and then we deliver the report. So it's basically I give you the report, and the report may say, the Audi's too quick or whatever, but then I give you the report and I say, well, these are not the drones you're looking for.
Right.
Right. All right.
I think that's our first Star Wars of the year.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Good job.
These are not the drones. What you're really reading there is not really.
It's droids,
that.
but we'll edit that.
Droids. Right. Right. These, what did I say? Clones.
Drones.
Yeah. These are. Yeah. Okay. Droids.
Get it right, Kettler.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Get it right. These are not the droids.
A lot of
This
nerds
is going to be your
listening.
comment.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
going to be your racer comment.
Right.
Couldn't get Star Wars right.
Couldn't get it right. Couldn't get it right. Anyway, so that's. I have that one opportunity to speak to those words on that paper.
Yeah,
and if that impression doesn't last, then there's no
What are you
use
gonna
to
do?
it.
Right.
Yeah.
For example, not to pick on Bill, but this is a good
Well, he's here, so
he's
he
here,
can
so
defend himself.
since he's here, it's fair play. For example, and I'll go back to a year ago, racing at Laguna, only because it's a good example. The Viper ran off on the lap 2 and took a rough ride over the curbs and destroyed the underfloor.
Okay.
The underfloor's loose.
Yeah.
It's pattering and all over the place. The car's super slow. Handles bad. I mean, all the stuff that associated with your underfloor being screwed up.
Right.
So, visibly, the car's not damaged. Runs the whole race. Doesn't have any technicals. Makes its pit stops.
Right.
Does its normal cadence for its pit stops and so
Right.
forth. But looks interminably slow.
Right.
Like, look, this thing needs some help. If you take that purely on the numbers, you say it needs help.
Right.
If you say, hey, the underfloor is loose from this car from lap 2, throw its data out, then you have a different story.
Sure.
But if you don't say that, the numbers hold.
Right.
So you have to be careful to make sure you add those things in. And, I look at the cars as they're racing. I go up and down the pit lane. I see what the crews are preparing to do. If you see somebody making a wing change during the race, you see things that are like unusual and out of the box, and you know that they're either hiding something or they're desperate or they're swinging for the fence or whatever. You see what's going on. I mean, 2 years ago, the Ferrari in the rain prepping tires.
Petit.
The Petit.
Yeah.
I caught that. I was the guy that caught that.
Yeah.
Because I go behind the scenes and look at what the hell's going
I
on.
don't think that story's too known, but
Yeah, well, let's tell it real quick.
Well, they were prepping tires. They were knocking the release agent off of the tires so that they could bring them in a
this
little
was
quicker.
Petit last year.
Petit,
I think.
not this year, but last year.
2020. Yeah, I guess it would have
The
been
rainy one.
2015.
Yeah.
The rainy one.
Right.
So I caught that in
How are they doing that?
they were using a die grinder.
Really? So they're just buzzing tires.
Yep. 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 They had a guy back there, cleaning them up, and obviously that has a desired effect.
Sure.
On a cold, wet track, it takes a while to get the mold agent off, as you well know.
Yeah.
And they're lethal.
Yeah.
Until you get to that point.
Yeah, even stickers in the dryer, a little sketchy. at
Yeah,
first.
yeah. And one of the things I always do in keeping with that is I always go look at the takeoff rack. Right?
Yeah.
So if you go down to Continental and you actually, because everybody leaves their information right in front of you to look at.
Right.
So you go down there and you look at the tires off the Viper, the tires off the Ferrari, tires off the Porsche.
Right.
And if you
You can look at their wear patterns.
you look at their wear pattern and their aspect and their texture and what they're doing, and you can kind of see which cars are really hitting it right, and which cars are struggling. They're all full of pickup. They're scrubbed off. They're running too much camber. You can see all this if you're used to doing it. And then you can really kind of pick out almost in your mind, even before the race starts, which cars are really going to be players.
Part of that to me is you have a reputation as being a very straight from the hip, no bullshit kind of guy. But you're now in a very white shirt, dealing with the series kind of role, and you're not a politician by my definition.
I am not.
How does that go over?
It goes over pretty good. I mean, I learned some pretty decent debating skills and stuff from my dad. My dad was a PhD here at Miami, an English professor, and prep debate people, and he was very, very witty sparring partner. So I learned a few things from him. But I'm not really a politician by nature, and I'm not really super comfortable in that role. I can do it, but I'm not really super comfortable at it, and I prefer to just use the facts as often as possible because it's much easier. Lies are too hard to remember, which ones you told to what people and whatever, and so you just got to just use the facts, and it usually turns out much better. It's a far easier story.
One of my favorite memories of you was 2015 at Detroit. I was doing video for Paul Miller. Raining through qualifying raining in practice right before qualifying. One of the drivers,
Dion.
I was trying to not name him.
I was just being a smart ass,
You're being
but
an
he
asshole.
was
He's
being
like, "No,
legit.
Dion," yeah. But I mean, it was really, really wet. Dion went off. Took off.
Dion went off. It was a
Took off
bad
Dion Von
scenario.
Mulkey. It was Dion Von Mulkey?
Yes, Dion Von Mulkey.
Just kidding, Dion.
At Dion VM.
We love you, Dion.
Oh, wow, we're going to call him
Yeah,
out.
well, if you guys are going
We love
there,
you,
I'm
Dion.
all
You're
for it.
forgiven.
Yeah, it's fine. You're a good kid.
But my point is, like, so I'm doing
hate that guy.
I'm doing like race recap videos for Paul Miller. I'm like, all right, well, I got to go shoot this, get a time lapse and all that, and the guys start to prep up for the clip, unclipping of the car and all that, and there's Brad Kettler rolling up his sleeves ready. And I remember watching it going. Not only was I impressed because I've never seen like the OEM rep roll up his sleeves and go to work on the car, but I could kind of see you're like, oh, thank God. like you were happy you could finally go back to working on a car.
I got
because
this.
They had like an hour and a half before they had to go out and qualify, so they had to get.
You
this
can't
thing
tell
going.
me no.
Yeah,
you need
you're
my
like,
help.
you need
Well,
me.
they did.
Yeah.
The car had two bolts broken off in the rear suspension subframe. They were sheared off. They were sheared off smooth with it, and it was going to take somebody with a little bit of finesse to get it out of there.
Yeah.
And I said, you guys work on everything else. I'll get these two bolts out.
Right.
And I did.
Right.
And I
I
got them
remember.
out. No problem. I got them out. But it was one of those things where you had to be a little bit crafty.
Yeah.
To
But
get them out of
it
there.
seemed like you were waiting for this moment. Like, I want to touch these cars, and I'm not allowed to.
He's
when
like, I got all my
fucking
tools
come
right here.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't bring tools.
right. No, I mean, and even today, if you guys will ever see me in the pit lane, even in white shirt and everything, I don't go to the pit lane without my gloves. I don't.
Interesting.
I don't go to the
Pay
pit lane
attention to this. I don't think I've ever noticed
without
that.
my
Yeah.
gloves because they're always in my pocket. Because you can't, if somebody hands you something broken or there's a hot wheel to look at,
Yeah.
scrape, you can't do anything if you can't touch it.
Yeah.
A broken piece of carbon that gets flung over the wall in a repair, you can't drag it out of the way if you don't have your gloves on.
Yeah.
Our listeners are kind of assholes, so they're gonna come up to you on pit lane if they see you and be like, "Where are the gloves?"
I'll have them.
Let's see them.
I'll have them.
Be ready.
I always wear Uvex Profos.
Oh, he's like
gloves.
calling it out.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah, I
No,
wear
no,
the
no.
same. I've worn the same ones for more than a decade, and they're the Kevlar reinforced kind of stretchy white cloth. They got a really good feel, and they're real good because carbon doesn't get through them, but you can still start a bolt with them.
Right.
So they got a pretty good feel. They're actually the gloves that they use on the Audi assembly line to handle the painted body panels, like the doors and stuff.
Right.
So they got a really good feel, a little bit of rubber in the texture, and they're tight.
Right.
And so you can really feel quite well, and then you don't scar anything.
So it's clearly a great product. Do they have any history of sponsoring podcasts?
I don't know if they do. I know they're hard to get. I have to actually get them through Audi.
You know what would help us drive this Honda Odyssey
With Continental tires on it.
would be Uvex gloves.
Uvex gloves. That's a nice Honda Odyssey.
It is a nice Honda
Those
Odyssey.
tires look really
They
good
do.
from here.
They look great.
Those Continental tires
They
on
look
there.
great. Yeah, you get it.
They've served you well.
He's good.
So that's your Brad Kettler memory. I've got like 10 Brad Kettler memories because we know each other from a previous life when I was 5 or something. And this picture's going on the website on dinnerwithracers.com. But the funny thing was is on the drive here yesterday, I texted my mom like, "Can you send me that Christmas card photo from when you worked for my parents like years ago?"
In the 80s.
And then when we got to the shop, you're like, "Oh, come look at this photo," and you showed me the same photo but the original or whatever. It's kind of
Right.
cool.
It was our Christmas card from Global Motorsport.
That's right.
Stevens Court in
Global
Tucker,
Motorsport,
Tucker,
not-
Georgia.
That's right, Tucker, Georgia, right
Global
across from
Motorsport.
FAF.
Yep.
Ferrari. of
FAF
Atlanta.
Ferrari.
Yeah.
Yep.
Um,
It was a heady time there. That was a cool era. That whole street.
yeah.
When you went down that street, once you went past the concrete plant, which people were like,
Tucco.
It's behind
was
the,
Tucco.
the concrete plant.
Yeah.
And you're like, yep, keep going.
Yeah,
And
the concrete was Tucco because it was Tucker Concrete.
Yep.
You know, Tucker, Georgia is where the shop was.
Yeah. And then at the end of this dead-end street was FAF Ferrari, which was one of the preeminent Ferrari places in the area.
Yeah.
And then John and Jessica's shop, and Ryan's parents. And then up the street, I forget the name of the man that did all the Lambos and Porsches
Yeah,
up
the
there.
Pantera there for a long time with the
Yeah.
yellow one. I remember that too.
I
Yeah.
remember him, but I don't remember his name.
Yeah.
But it was a cool place because on that little dead-end street, every other car you passed was like a
Something
super
cool.
exotic of some kind.
When we were talking about like this episode, I was like, yeah, it'd be neat to have Brad on because he worked with my dad a long time, and we had that obviously the photo you'll see on the website, but also I got to see you go on to do other stuff, and my dad always speak highly of you. And then I met you when I was a mechanic, I think back in like 02 or 03, and you're like, and the thing you said to me that was so cool was like your parents were always very nice to me.
They were.
And I think I said they weren't always very nice to me.
Yeah, I know. Oh, there was some tough.
I'm guessing you earned it though.
Yeah, no, I definitely
Yeah,
deserve
so-
half of it.
They were nice. They were nice, but yeah, there was some tough days in there where you really were happy that you had something on your bench,
Right.
that you could just focus on working on and look really busy, like a good little elf, and everybody just leave you alone.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. As my career as a driver started going on, my parents, my mom especially, she's a big fan of yours, would always say, just go say hi to Brad Kettler. It's probably good that he knows you're trying to find rides and you never know. And that's true for any young driver. Like if you know
Sure.
somebody, like just be
Always say
around,
hi.
you know?
Right.
Yeah. And
Be
so
noticed.
I'd always go over and say, hi, Brad, Ryan Eversley. And you're like, hey, Ryan, good to see all your parents. And then I ran into you once and you're like, I know who you are now. You don't have to
Right.
say your name. But I'm like, well, I don't want you to be awkward. But the coolest thing you've done, and then we're going to start making fun of you because I can't just build you up the whole time, was my first pro win at St. Petersburg in the Acura 2 years ago, which was an unexpected thing. They made you drive after the race was over. You didn't stop in your pit box or go to victory lane. You have to go back to the support paddock. So they make you drive all the way down pit lane. And my team was at the beginning of pit lane, and you were there with Audi. And as I passed my team and they're all freaking out, I see one guy walking out in a white shirt clapping. And I was like, Brad Kettler! Like, look at that! And you gave me the thumbs up, and I was like,
well-celebrated
that is
victory.
so cool
Oh yeah.
that you remembered it. And just because I knew from being a kid.
Don't think for a moment, Ryan, I'm not proud.
I appreciate that. I
You
really
know,
do.
I mean, I am. I mean, to see people, multi-generational stuff in
Right.
racing is pretty common. But to see that, and then my background with your family
Right.
and all that other stuff, and to see you get to that point where you're getting there, you're going to go get the big cup I mean, that's on it. That's awesome.
Well, that was
And it doesn't matter what brand took you there.
Yeah,
It's just that you know, anybody who's ever won a race can appreciate how damn hard you got to fight to get there.
Right. Yeah.
You know, it doesn't happen. It's not for the faint of heart.
Yeah.
You got to. There's somewhere along the line you had to dedicate yourself to something really deep to get in that position.
So we kind of jumped right into it, but Brad Kettler, the sort of career history, to kind of go through that real quick for those who don't know. You didn't grow up in a racing family, from what I know.
No. My dad was very mechanically inclined. In fact, he met my mother when he was a mechanic at a Ford dealership. And he had a big interest in it as a young man, but then, you know, went off to school and got uninvited back to Purdue due to his grades after he discovered beer and whatever. And
just like me.
Had to do a stint back at home with Mom.
Oh.
And have a job and so forth, and then decided that he was going to go back and get his PhD, and he did. So he met my mother when he was a mechanic and so forth, and they got married, and they had me really young. They were like 21 years old.
Oh, wow.
And lived in a trailer court in Lafayette, Indiana, till I was about 9 years old. And then we moved over here when my dad got a assistant professor job at Miami of Ohio.
Yeah.
In 1968, I think, 69, something like that. And we moved over here then. We were always, as I grew up, we were always reading motorcycle magazines and, you know, sharing stories about that kind of stuff. And, you know, in high school, you know, I had some muscle cars and was interested in a couple things. I still have my first car. It was a 68 Chevelle. So that led me to being, you know, gearhead.
Right, that's all it took. Was
and so forth.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so forth. And I built a drag car when I was a teenager, and it was a pretty good drag car. It was based on a Nova, and, you know, butt dynoed the motors and, you know, built the whole thing, you know, without any real resources. And got real good at, like, the factory interchange stuff. Like, studied all the, you know, the Kingswood station wagon came with a 400 4-bolt main. Yeah, I've been in and out of college a couple times. I wasn't a great student, I'll admit it. I went on and got some accolades, but it was a battle for me to do it.
Right.
I was far more interested in building cars and doing the real stuff than I was studying all the analytics of it. I appreciated that, and I knew it was important, but, you know, the focus of a young man that age is really hard.
Yeah.
And we all know it. And so with my dad's support and so forth, I was able to get through Miami and sneak out of there with something. And but I got a decent education there. I learned a lot.
And just be clear, this is not Miami, Florida.
No, Miami of Ohio.
Right.
Miami of Ohio. And so I built this C Sports racer. It was actually a Ralt, flat bottom Ralt Atlantic car.
What kind of budget would you say you had?
Oh my God.
Like 8-9 million?
Yeah, 8, 9 million, 10 million.
No, I'm thinking.
Hear that, Jeff?
I'm thinking we built this car. I think including buying the car, we probably had $7,500 in it.
Yeah.
And that the biggest purchase was a tracer body from California. It was I don't know if you guys remember that. It was a one-piece body with an integrated wing on the back. Pretty cool looking thing.
Yeah.
Looked really cool. And I didn't know what I was doing, so I was learning this as I was going along. I had some Carroll Shelby books.
Yeah.
Some ideas, and my uncles had done some roundy round racing with some sprint cars, so I had some pretty good idea about how to put things together, but I really wasn't road racing savvy at that point. You know, I was pretty good at tuning motors and fixing things, but in terms of like setup and understanding all the nuances of it, I didn't.
Right.
But in those days, it was moreover if you could get the car to actually not handle terribly and run the whole race, which might be 35 minutes.
Right.
That was an accomplishment. So you would end up really gaining some success just by virtue of the fact that your stuff didn't fall apart.
So at what point we're like, okay, this is what I want to do?
Well, I had, through a mutual friend here in town, a guy named Jerry Cohen, he had an old childhood friend, a guy named John Mullen, and John Mullen ran the Formula car and the rental program stuff for a fellow named Michael Gouet in Atlanta, which was Essex Racing.
I think we know him, Essex Racing, right?
So I went down and interviewed with Michael in end of 86, beginning of 87, and was looking to do something different. I was doing, you know, street cars and Porsches and all kinds of stuff, but was really kind of lost.
Yeah.
Didn't really have a, I was a pain in the ass. I was hard to, I was hard to handle. I didn't.
And so reflecting on what we talked about earlier with going for glory and whatnot, like what made you a pain in the ass?
Just I was a bit of a prima donna about what I wanted to do.
Yeah. Okay.
And really, honestly.
So you're the age that you understand now.
Yeah.
I
I totally
love
understand
the
it.
total understanding of what you were at the time instead
absolutely.
of like I really had some ideas.
Yeah.
Which
No,
is
I didn't.
Much more common.
I had some ideas, but they were all the ideas about how propelling Brad forward was going to
Right.
happen.
Yeah, right,
They
right.
weren't about changing my high school and my young man ambition was to. I got blown up when I got into engineering school. I discovered it was a lot harder than I expected it was going to be.
Sure.
For what I had mastered from high school, I felt like I had enough of a tailwind that I could get in there and actually show something. I couldn't. I didn't have the mathematical ability, and that's to be really honest, that's where I struggled. I later on accomplished most of it through just sheer determination, but it wasn't natural or innate for me.
Yeah,
so
you had to work.
I had to work at it really, really hard, and harder than most people. The old sweat hog term. When it comes to that, that's where I was at.
Yeah.
Part of the reason I got hired there was that we actually ended up going to the runoffs with the car that I built.
Okay.
And we did quite well in the qualifying for the runoffs race. The car got damaged pretty badly and the chassis got bent. And I actually used a pole and a come-along in the Essex race shop to actually stretch the chassis back.
Okay.
So Michael got to take a look at me,
Sure.
And-
in action.
Well, and he saw the ability to actually work.
Right, to actually work. And he
Yeah.
said, we're putting together a big program. For the next year, they're going to run 2 cars, 2 Tigers in the IMSA championship. And
GTP lights.
GTP lights.
Yeah.
And they were going to run 2 Tigers in the race then. And I started out at that level, working on that car, not as a number 1, but just behind the number 1.
Yeah.
And doing pit stops and stuff. So I went from actually knowing nothing about it, really, to doing that first pit stop in Daytona when the green flag, and being
Right.
like, holy cow, this
Better
is all,
figure it
this
out.
is
Yeah.
I better figure this out
Yeah,
quick
yeah.
because this is going to happen. But Michael's workshop was a fantastic training ground for anybody, and the experience that I gained from him, not only technical experience, but just sort of sage wisdom, action experience. I learned a lot from him about how to negotiate, how to state your position, how to look at things a little bit more in the big picture and so forth. And I really learned a ton from Michael. I really did. I owe him a great deal of debt of gratitude too.
That kind of dynamic of everyone's got to kind of do everything. Obviously, it's a great training ground for a young guy. That's how Essex was set up. Would you say there's a modern version of that today? I mean, do you try to do that with guys like Cody?
Yeah, I do. I mean, Cody is an amazingly talented young man, and
We have brownies.
can do all that.
Holy crap!
Brad, you're gonna have to hold on a minute.
Yeah,
While
okay.
everyone
Brad, everything you're saying does not matter.
Yeah,
right?
whatever,
Doesn't matter.
dude.
Yeah.
Great brownie though.
All right.
Put chocolate in front of you.
Yeah.
It's all over.
Thank you very much. This is amazing. Anyway,
Really, my guy Charlie, and now David that works for me now, but my guy Charlie Boggs that's been with me since the beginning of this GT program. He really has emulated more of my education because I've made him do everything. He now knows how to TIG weld. He now knows how to bend tube. He now knows how to build. He's an accomplished gearbox builder. I've taught him how to drive trucks. How to deal with. The kid had no concept about what a choke did. So now he's comfortable with a camper special. You pump it twice, pull choke halfway out, and when it bubbles a little bit, you push it in.
Right.
For him, that concept was like, I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
It completely points. What are these? So he's got a really good overall education as far as that goes, and I've been happy to teach him all that. And actually, I feel fortunate to be able to teach him that,
Right.
and not teach him, but give him the opportunity to learn it. And now my
I like
other
that expression, by the way.
my other young you can't really teach anybody anything. You can just give them the opportunity to learn it.
Yeah, they have to want that.
They have to want it. I learned that from my dad. You don't teach a dog anything. You just encourage the right behavior that they already have.
Yeah.
every morning's meeting is, work hard, work fast, wear your radios. I tell them that because we have walkie-talkies because we got some.
Well, you have to because you have 17 buildings across College Canyon.
Eight
spread across College Canyon,
Right.
Ohio/Indiana.
It's not that many. It's
College-
only 8.
It's only 8. But, when we got those, I said, you know what? I'm trying to bring us up to the level of a good junkyard. A good junkyard.
We can do this, guys.
Guys, we can do this.
Are you like the honorary mayor of College Canyon?
No. Actually, the mayor is my PA. Allison is her stepdad.
Oh, that's
So, and you guys just missed it by 2 weeks. We had a incredible blues festival here.
Oh, that damn World Challenge finale.
2 weeks ago. 2 weeks
I could have
ago,
missed that.
we had a great time. Right. We had all these blues. The parking lot behind the shop there was all made into one big stage area.
Oh, wow.
And we built a stage up off of one of our big flatbed trailers. They went up almost 25, 30 feet in the air. We had lights. We had pro sound. We had some great players.
Right.
We had a bunch of great players from Chicago. It's not that far away, so got them to come down there, and we had a big time. Stayed out late and got drunk. It was fun.
That was the Brad Kettler Blues Festival?
Yes.
Is that what all that
Well,
is?
it's College Corner Blues.
We're declaring you the honorary mayor.
Yeah, you're the mayor
of
of
College
Corner
Corner.
now.
Right.
So, how did you go from a 25-year-old learning to weld at Essex to like the guy now for Audi in Audi racing in North America?
Just keeping my head down.
Yeah.
I mean, I did a year, almost 2 years with Michael, and then I did a year plus, almost 2 years or more with Phil Creighton.
Mm-hmm.
And then I worked for Spice till they closed the doors. I worked for Spice up until 91-ish, and it was really sad because that was a cool job. I loved that job.
Right.
I loved working in there.
Got tied to Honda there.
Yeah, got tied to Honda there. Built an NSX powered Camel White car that was a Daytona winner, which was a killer race car.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I've told some of the times I share some of the old stories with some of the young guys, and especially when we talk about planning and technology and stuff like this.
Do they want to hear it?
Usually not.
Okay.
But they can relate to this one. And we had the application of that engine pretty well in the car, the Honda engine in the back of or the Acura engine in the back of the Spice.
And this is the Comptech Parker
Comptech.
Johnson
Yeah,
car.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
very famous.
Just
Very
destroyed
famous
everybody
car.
in
Yeah.
what would now be LMP2.
Yeah. We had it pretty well fitted, pretty well mocked up, had most of the systems like pseudo-operational in terms of what we were going to do with the clutch and the brakes and all the other stuff. The servo drive for the steering, we had that worked out. And so Acura sent this group of engineers, and it was a classic group of Japanese engineers with cameras, and they all were about the same size, and they showed up, and they were all very polite, didn't speak much, and said yes a lot, and bowed and everything. They were really cool, and they came in the shop, and they were very diligent, and they measured the car out. They measured out all the systems, and they had the master drawing for the engine management stuff, and they mapped it all out and measured everything, and they were very diligent and worked really hard on this. And then they shook everybody's hand, said thank you very much, thank you, and then they left. And so I asked the shop manager at that point, I said, well, what did this really accomplish? He says, well, they're going to do the wiring harness for the engine control on the dashboard. And I thought, okay, we'll see where this goes. I wasn't like that. I didn't have faith in the Japanese guys or whatever, but classically, things of that nature at that point in time were disasters.
Well, I assume you kind of got to build it right there next to the
You
car,
do.
and so if it's overseas,
You do.
Yeah.
You do.
And from what I gather from you, you're totally fine just handing things off.
Yeah.
You don't need to be involved at
Yeah,
all.
you can take that to the
Yeah,
other side
yeah.
of the world.
Yeah,
It won't
well,
affect me.
I am and I'm not. I mean, you have to. You can't do everything yourself. So, you have to delegate something. What was it? Delegation without follow through is abdication.
That's that old chestnut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
You hear that, Jason?
Sean.
Business partner, Jason?
mhm.
He's not listening.
So, anyway, about 4 weeks later, box arrives in the front office there, and it's from Japan. It's got all this Japanese writing on it. So, we're going to open it up. There's a wiring harness inside. Took the thing out, laid it out on it. It was really nicely executed. all labeled in English, although some of the words were misspelled and stuff. It was very clear where
Close
everything
enough.
went. Close enough.
Yeah.
No question. No picking on anybody about that. Plug the thing in. Every single plug fit.
Oh,
Okay,
wow.
so as I'm plugging this thing in, I'm like, I've never
This
ever
can't be right.
seen
Right.
this
Yeah.
before.
Right.
Right. So I plugged the whole thing in, and I remember we had fuel and stuff in the car, and I'm standing next to the door, and Jonesy Morris, long since retired car builder, IndyCar guy, really talented guy, Jonesy Morris was standing there, and I said, well, Jonesy, it's a moment of truth. And he said, let her rip. And so I flipped on the main switch, and the alternator light came on. All the gauges tested. I was like, that's a really good sign. We heard the fuel pumps fire for the moment, and checked it for neutral. And I remember to this day pushing the button, and I pushed the button, and the engine spun about 2 revolutions.
Yeah.
And just went wham, and was running.
Wow.
It didn't stutter. It didn't
Yeah.
bobble. It didn't do anything. It was not running, and then it was running.
That was not the punchline I was waiting for.
Yeah, and it was like, no, and I wasn't either, because normally,
And there went Jonesy.
yeah, normally fitting
R.I.P. Jonesy.
a Ferrari or fitting a Pontiac or fitting one of those days, just turning on the main switch and seeing what did work was the beginning of the diagnostic agony
right.
Yeah.
to try to get the car to work.
Right.
And you normally allotted days for this.
Yeah.
Sure.
Because you never knew what you were
Right.
going to have to track.
Right.
This thing lit up. The alternator light went off. I was like, I turned it off in shock.
You're like,
Right.
whoa.
That didn't happen.
I was so shocked.
Right.
I was like, did that just? I said, did that just happen? And Jonesy's like, seems like it. He said, we looked around a little bit, checked some things. He said, start it up again. We started back up. That became the behavior of that car.
Yeah.
Right.
So I try to relate to these guys that, we were able to do this before the internet existed.
Yeah.
Right.
And
This is possible.
It is possible,
Right.
and you have to think that maybe that asset isn't there for you. And I like it when they realize that, that the here and now right in front of you is very, very important.
Yeah.
We have so much opportunity in our world today to say, oh, just send me a picture of that or forward that to me, and it comes right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so forth. But you don't really get the right kind of engineering level thinking if it's also immediate.
Yeah.
Because if you're doing
Maybe
it
not
good,
being as thorough as you need to be.
not being
because
as thorough as you need to
go
be.
back,
You're
Right.
not forced to think.
right,
You're not forced to innovate.
Well, you can't go back and, if you get the measurement wrong, you can always email you and get a photo back
Yeah.
within
Right.
an hour,
Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah,
right.
I got you.
And so in those days, you were really forced to think things through to completeness, and completeness is kind of a dirty word around Kettler Motorwerks because it was one of my big tenets that I stomp my feet on all the time. I hate half-done projects, or I hate projects that are a phase is half done.
Right.
And I really lean on completion aspect of it. The completion aspect of it, like when we send out an engine that we service for a customer, or we send out a gearbox that's service for a customer, we have to realize, I tell the guys all the time, think of the moment when they take the lid off of what we sent them.
Yeah.
What are they expecting in there? Right?
Right.
They're not expecting the low-hanging fruit you want to give them.
Yeah.
They're expecting something better. They're expecting the check sheet to be right on top. They're expecting the tags to say that there's no oil in it and double check the potentiometer to
Right.
be attached. They expect it to be spotlessly clean.
Yeah.
And, loved on. And every little thing about it, the seals in place and all the lock wires pretty and so forth. I said, there's only one chance to give that impression back to them.
Yeah.
And that's the moment they take the lid off the
Right,
box.
right.
Yeah.
And so this is a really big thing. So, not that I have any slackers, but if you don't hammer, you don't get that level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't achieve that level of giving that unit back or giving that supply to them with something special. And we tried it once in a while. We put a note on there. Or, Charlie likes to send a page out of Playboy or something. Wrap it up in there. You know what I mean?
Smiley face.
Charlie's my guy.
Yeah, try to do something, to say, hey, we're with you here.
Yeah.
We're thinking about you.
All right. So really serious stuff here.
Mhm.
You've done some amazing things for Audi. You've done some really cool stuff in the IMSA days. Can you give us Lena Gates' phone number?
Sure.
There it is.
We should have just asked that.
Yeah,
at the
we
start,
didn't. No, we
Great,
tried to
thanks,
get her.
Brad. Well, we'll see you soon.
We weren't sure where in her duties if she was going to be in the U.S. during our trip, and we went through 3 or 4 different channels, and it's impossible to get to her.
Mhm.
So all right, so you're our guy.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
You're the in.
Lena loves me. You know,
So you can put in a word for us.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Did
Yeah,
she?
that was a big push from. Oh wow, he's got his phone out.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hold on, don't send her a picture. I'm not wearing a good shirt.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
did she like older, exhausted creatives, or handsome young race car drivers?
I'm not really sure.
He's like,
not-
let's ask her. No.
No.
I could ask her right now. I said,
No.
I'm getting interviewed right now. Which do you like?
She's like, let's see the exhausted guy.
Yeah. She actually
Nope.
sent me a text that I haven't answered recently. I'm just looking for it here.
Oh, you're that guy.
Yeah.
Don't
and,
ruin this for us.
Yeah, and you know, she wanted to catch up on doing some things. I mean, we were really disappointed that we
They
couldn't
didn't get to go to Le Mans.
that we
Yeah.
couldn't
Yeah.
do Le Mans together. We really were, because we were looking forward to that. Yeah, the last chat said, hope you're doing okay. Let me know when you're free to have a chat about life, the universe, and everything else, Lena.
Oh,
Wow.
there's a podcast. for
That
just
sounds like
occasion.
she's ready to be on
She's
Dinner with
ready for
Racers, season 3.
it. Exactly.
So-
We're going to England.
We're going to Europe.
Yeah.
But have you seen? I assume you've seen Truth in 24.
Of
Because
course.
we were talking about this last night. Very first scene that introduces Brad Kettler to the Truth in 24
Sebring.
is you talking about opium in Amsterdam.
Mm-hmm.
Because they said, like, we need to find 2 seconds.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, have you been smoking opium from Amsterdam?
Well, actually, the setup from that was we were on the qualifying grid in Long Beach.
Okay.
That's where that scene comes from. And I'm standing there with Christian Veck, who's one of my long old-time colleagues, Christian. Christian is the quintessential tight, wooden German guy. I mean,
Yeah.
tight, right?
Now it's relax time.
Yes. Yeah. And we'd gotten our asses handed to us the year before. I think we finished 8th and 9th. I mean, the cars were dreadful.
Yeah.
They were awful. They couldn't go around the button hook turn in that hard, super hard, back on itself right-hander in Long
Oh,
Beach.
yeah,
Long Beach,
yeah.
okay,
We
around
couldn't
11,
make it.
You're right.
hairpin,
We
yeah.
could not make it. They had to apex it in a certain spot just to make it
Just to
around
make
the
it around,
corner.
sure. Right.
We had a different steering rack geometry, and in fact, a whole different front end geometry. And it had been very controversial on the front end geometry because, you know, I'm not one of these guys that goes in there like Adrian Newey and says, "Oh no, we got to change all of the roll points." No, I'm not like that. What we were trying to do was get a little bit more camber gain and get a little bit more actual steering rack out of it,
Yeah.
and try to keep the inclination somewhere in a reasonable state. So we designed some spacers and things, and we had this different geometry, but the car would turn a lot farther so the guys could actually hook around the corner and get on the power. And it was pretty successful. But the car, the Spiders were very fast that year. So the Germans, of course, they're a bit xenophobic about anything that's different that they didn't design. So immediately they're on the bandwagon that, maybe this front end geometry is not all that. Right. And, this is why we're, 8/10 behind the Porsches or whatever. So then he walks up and we're just getting ready to qualify. It's like 8:05 in the morning, and getting the R10 ready to go was a 2.5-hour project. So we've been there since before 5.
Right.
To heat the thing up and do the heat the diesel fuel and heat the intercoolers and heat to get the thing to run and not smoke, because we weren't allowed to smoke in public.
Yeah, like
cars
from
could-
corporate, right?
Corporate,
Yeah,
corporate
yeah,
not.
right. That's
Cars
brand
could
thing.
not smoke, so it became a big deal to kind of keep the intercoolers hot. I
So
know there's
that-
not many opportunities where people have been in racing and they've had to come up with a way to heat
Heat an
the
intercooler.
intercoolers.
Right.
But this was actually something we had to do
Yeah.
to keep the cylinder temperature up
So
so
no
that we
smoke,
would
right.
not have any smoke issues. So trying to keep all that into perspective and get this thing ready to go at 8:05 in the morning, and I'm already just kind of whatever today. So Christian stomps up to me, very awake and alert, all coffeeed up, and says, "For whatever reason, Dr. Ulrich says we should be 8/10 faster than the Porsches." So he just tells me this statement right there on the grid, like I'm supposed to say, turn around and say, "Okay, guys, flip that switch over to 8."
So
You know the deal.
Yeah.
Right.
And so he comes up to me all bright and breezy and delivers this message, and I'm like,
Now, is he doing it to be a
no,
Oh,
no.
he's just happy to tell you
He's
the
just
news. Yeah.
he's happy to tell me this message, and I'm thinking, oh my God. And so I'm standing there with my coffee, and I looked at him and I said, I said, "Was he got some good opium from Amsterdam? Because it ain't going to happen." You know, we've gone as fast as we're going to go in practice here, and that's really what it is. And then Christian says, "I don't want to fight with you."
That's what he says.
He says, "I don't want to fight with you." He says, "I'm not in the mood to fight with you." He says, "Let's just try." I said, "Okay, we'll try.
Sure.
We'll try." It's not like we're going to do anything different than we were going to do 30 seconds ago.
Yeah,
Right,
right. Just because he said, "Make it so."
Make it so.
Yeah.
But Dr. Ulrich, when that whole thing was vetted and aired,
You're like, oh, that's on TV.
yeah, you know, Ava Maria Veit, you guys may have met before. She's a communications woman from Sport Press, and she has a reputation for being pretty tough and so forth. And a lot of people take her the wrong way, but she's actually very sweet. She asked Dr. Ulrich when they aired it. She told him ahead of time that was in there, and he said, "Well, let's see it and see what it looks like."
Wait, so Ulrich didn't get like a preview?
He did.
Okay.
He got to preview it,
Okay.
and he had the opportunity to take it out.
Yeah, but I would have thought they'd had to say
to
in
take
that,
it out,
so,
and
yeah.
he, according to her, he laughed out loud big time. He thought it was absolutely hilarious.
That's why I like him.
Oh yeah, there's a
Because
lot to like there. He's
There's
a great
lot
man.
of brands who, having made more than my share of motorsport videos, a brand that's willing to say, yeah, no, leave that kind of stuff in is so hard to find.
We talked about that later, and actually, Dr. Ulrich and I had a beer over it, and he said, "Oh, he left that in there." He said, "You guys weren't disrespecting me." He said, "You weren't calling me an idiot, or you weren't, doing anything like that." He said, "You were interacting with each other, and that was your real comment."
What happened.
Yeah, and that's what happened. And he said, in fact, if anything, it made me appreciate the relationship that. This is him talking.
Yeah.
They made him appreciate the relationship that Christian and I had, where I could be my American sarcastic self, and he could be his, smiling, everything according to the spreadsheet self, German guy, and yet we, I don't want to fight with you, and I'm like, okay, I don't really want to fight with you either, but damn it, that's not really going to happen.
Right.
So don't try to manage your expectations.
Yeah.
Because we haven't been that fast in practice, and we're not suddenly going to sprint to the front. So
Not gonna fix itself.
as it turned out, though, we did win the race. We were first and second. So it
Were you 0.8 seconds faster?
we weren't in qualifying.
Right.
We were right where we expected to be in qualifying,
Right.
but we won the race based on tire management.
Okay.
You got to work with, and you continue to get to work with some really, really good drivers, probably the best of the in the history of the sport. Was there one guy, and I'm not saying like he was a dickhead, but is there one guy that you were like, I just cannot work with this guy. We just don't see eye to eye. I know he's talented. He respects me, but I just like. And if not, then I'm not leading you. I have no clue about half of those guys. But was there somebody in your career that you're like, God, I know that guy's good, but we just do not get on?
Yeah, we had a couple of misconnections.
Yeah.
It doesn't. Not everyone's going to turn up a winner.
Sure.
I mean, and thinking back on it, they were fairly limited exposures to things. Jan Lammers.
Sure.
I just couldn't connect with him.
Yeah.
I don't know why in particular, but we just always seemed to be on the opposite sides of the wavelength.
Sure.
And had a hard time understanding what he wanted in the car.
Right.
And he was frustrated and critical. And we already had a pretty good program going, and he really wanted to do a lot of stuff that was outside the box, and I wouldn't do it. So we didn't really get on that well.
Sure.
Didier Tays,
Huh, yeah.
I got along with okay, but we just didn't see each other all that great and didn't connect all that well. But that's really the only two I can think of.
Yeah.
And I really hate to single those guys out because it wasn't like it was a bad
Well,
experience.
it sounds like a personal thing. It just didn't.
Right,
gel.
didn't really work.
Yeah.
Stefan Johansson,
Yeah.
I gave him a lot of great cars. He drove a lot of great times in my cars, but always seemed to have the absolute mother of all bad luck
Yeah.
for whatever reason. And I mean, even him, he was like, I don't know what it is about this program. We
Right.
can't, whenever I'm in it, we don't seem to, he wasn't picking
Come
on me.
together, right?
It just, the stuff didn't fall in place.
Right.
But those are really the only three I can think of.
Now, did you ever work with Johnny O'Connell or Dario Franchitti?
Dario a little bit, in the
Okay.
World Challenge.
Yeah, so you know the story about how O'Connell tried to run him over.
Oh, yeah, sure. Everybody knows that one.
Yeah.
So on the opposite side of the hardest drivers to work with, and you can't pick Christensen, you can't pick McNish.
Uh-huh.
Who would you take right now if you only get one pick out of the Audi guys or whoever?
What are we
you worked with?
gonna race?
We're gonna race a prototype at Le Mans right now, and you can't have McNish and you can't have Christensen.
JJ Leto.
Leto, nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Without a question.
For sure. Yeah, he's legit.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, you can only imagine, you know, when I got to really know those Scandinavian guys, you can only imagine the fear that the Brits had when they saw those boats heading for the shore, because those guys are ruthless.
Yeah.
Man. They are just absolutely there for whatever they can get out of it.
Right.
And JJ, I had, you know, many great days racing with him, and he loved us as a team, and that made him really easy to put up in that position. But at the same time, the guy was unbelievably fast,
Right.
and incredibly committed and so forth, and just a incredibly talented driver. He liked some odd things in the car. He liked the back end a bit loose. He liked to feel the car slide and then set.
Right.
Slide and then set it. And then he said that it was muscle memory that came from all his ice driving when he was young. And it was an odd way to set a prototype up, but if you really gave him what he was looking for, he would reward you on the stopwatch without any question. He liked uncomfortably low tire pressures. And things,
Uncomfortable for you?
Yeah. And things like that. But man, if you give him the goods, he was a great team inspiration. All of them are. All the great ones engage the team.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that he's better than anybody else, but the charisma that the guys from the seat bring to the team is not to be underestimated.
Sure.
And I have one particular short story about that, and it was 05 Le Mans, and we were there early for the warm up. It was a beautiful, bright, sunny day, really bright, and you know how gorgeous it can be in the summer there. You know, in the early morning, the light's so pretty and everything, and the cars were out. It was an 8 o'clock warm up, and we'd let the group go. We were really ready with our car. I mean, very ready. You have to realize this was our 5th year with the R8.
Yeah.
The guys that were on that team had been working on that car for 5 years. They knew how to put it together. I knew how to engineer it, and it was only just something that would manage to slip by that would be a problem.
Yeah.
Because we knew the car really well.
Yeah.
Anyway, we were very restricted that year. Very slow due to the ACO regulations. We'd lost some restrictor, and the car was really down on top speed. But we worked on getting it to, you know, all the other elements as good as they could be.
Yeah.
And we let the group go, and we let JJ go maybe a minute after the group, and he was out by himself, and he came by on his first flyer. And I was out in the pit lane in the box all by myself, and all the guys were down in the garage. And it was on the Jumbotron. And I love the big, I'm getting goosebumps now. I love the telephoto shot from the first chicane looking up towards Tet Rouge.
Yeah.
Right? And the cars, they look like air hockey pucks when they're,
Right.
you know, when they
Doing
they come out there and they slide across,
Yeah.
and so forth. And right at that point in time, ours came into view, and I mean, it really looked good.
Yeah.
I mean, it looked
Like majestic.
superb. Looked absolutely butter smooth.
Yeah.
Drifted out there onto the edge and so forth, and looked really nice. You know, lights blazing, cars immaculate, clean. You know, looked really nice. And right then at that moment, JJ keyed the radio, and whether this was really true or not, I asked him later, and he really wouldn't answer me. And he keyed the radio, and he said, "Boys, the car is fantastic." He says, "I can put it anywhere I want." He says, "It rides the curbs good." He says, "It feels absolutely solid, doesn't squeak and rattle." I mean, he gave us this little description, this little 10-second description heading up towards the first chicane. He says, "I think we're going to have a good day." He said, "The car feels rock solid." And hearing that, all the guys in the garage heard it, and then watching from a distance the energy that exploded
Inside
in the
guys.
garage.
Yeah.
That. For him to say that, because he didn't often hand that out.
Sure.
He
had to
very
earn it.
seldom handed that out. And for him to say that, again, I asked him, was that really true or not? And he never really answered the question. But whether it was or it wasn't, the timing of that moment and those comments made a difference to those guys.
Yeah.
It did. He had a great ability to do that.
Sure.
At times. And then he was also a big inspiration as a person. I mean, he stayed every night till the car was off the flat patch.
Mm-hmm.
He would have a chair, and he would sit
Yeah.
and hang out with the guys while they were lining it and setting it up. He wanted to know what they were doing.
Yeah.
Not that he was second guessing them or anything, but he wanted to be
Want to be a part of it.
to
Yeah.
really understand, so he saw the guys, fussing over the last half a millimeter of toe and going through all their processes and how fussy and fastidious they were. So no, he was really one of my very, very favorites, and he was fun to party with, and he was a fun person.
So one of the things we do on the show is a pass-along question.
Mhm.
So we had lunch with Janet Guthrie, first female to race the Indy 500 and the Daytona 500, a couple days ago in Aspen. And her question for you, because she worked on her own race cars, she built her own engines, very hands-on, didn't necessarily like working on the car, but it was what it took to get her into the car. So her question for you is, why do you enjoy actually working on cars?
Oh, that's easy. I mean, it's the I don't know. Machines to me, and I do this a little bit too much, which is witnessed by the collection of old Crocs that I have collected around me. But machines to me have a special sort of presence.
Yeah.
And I mean, even my farm all out here is really
Yeah.
it's one of my favorite things. I love this. I love the thing,
Yeah.
and the time I'm on that is my time. When I'm out running that thing, I like the sound
Out
of
on
it.
the tractor.
Yeah, and all that stuff. It's very gratifying to see them come to life. And I consider it like a life, even though it isn't. We all know they're just machines.
Sure.
It's just stuff being executed through the algorithms that are in the ECU, and that's all that there is to it. But to me, there's more to it, and so I enjoy it because I feel like imparting part of your spirit and imparting part of your skills and so forth, you're putting them in somewhere where they can speak back to you.
Yeah.
I think that whenever you're building a project, whether it's a street rod or a muscle car or a race car or whatever, I always take plenty of time to make sure I look at it. And by looking at it, really take it in a whole presence, to kind of take in the energy of the whole thing. And I mean, in the workshop at Champion down in Florida, I was always the last guy out of the shop, seemed like, if not always. And when the R8s were done, we always tried to finish them one day before loading so they could sit on the ground and stuff. And this was partially a psychological thing for the team to not be just thrashing on the thing while it's all the way onto the tailgate.
Yeah.
But I always loved that day before we loaded, and the R8s would be sitting on the ground and turn the lights off in the shop, and it would just have the night lights on and the eggshell epoxy floor, and those two beasts sitting there at the end. I mean, they look so f***ing bad sitting there. They're all put together and low and very, very purposeful looking, and it was a great moment to kind of reflect on what they were. And I'd speak to them. Good night, ladies. Whatever.
Yeah.
Because they were important to me.
Yeah.
They become that much part of your life, and certain cars seem to have certain spirits. I know other people agree with me to a certain point, but some cars seem to have a more eager spirit to run than others.
That might be the most thoughtful answer we've ever gotten on that question.
So our next guest.
I think really for me, one of my things that I was blessed with was an ability to kind of understand engines and stuff from an elemental point of view, not necessarily from an educational point of view, but I try to impart this into Charlie and Dave and the other guys I work with. When the motor's lean, when it sounds like when it's lean, when it's out of time, when it sounds like when it's out of time. So for so many people, this doesn't exist.
Sure.
Because even when I was doing it, we were still tuning carburetors and changing emulsion tubes and doing plug chops and looking up the tailpipe. And these were our tools that we used to tune our motors to compete with. Now that's all done, on a chip, and you don't have to worry about it. But if you know what's right, then you can hear it when it's not.
Yeah.
Right.
And so the guys will still, even up to this year, and there's been multiple reasons, Cody, again, fantastic engineer and so forth, but I was called to the pit lane one time this year in Watkins Glen. I mean, there's 60 people up there.
Right.
And they call me on the radio. They say, BK, we need you to come to pit lane and listen to this engine. And I'm like, there's 60 of you up here.
Right.
Can't one of you hear it's missing a cylinder?
Right.
No. They can't. They might be able to tell something's wrong, but they really don't know what it is.
Right.
And then and it's not like I'm got any special gifts, but I walk up and I listen to it. I said, it's on the left side. It's an intake valve. It's on the left bank. So we go back and we take the valve cover off the left bank, and it's got a broken intake valve in cylinder number 2.
On the follow up to that, our next guest in very short time, just a couple hours.
We're about to call him, let him know we're late.
Is Mike Shank,
Mm-hmm.
and you're familiar with Mike. He's
Mm-hmm.
not too far away from here.
Mm-hmm.
Any question you want to ask Mike Shank?
Why haven't we ever worked together? We're both these programs from Ohio, some Ohio boys. What's the matter? I thought about that question a little bit, but I don't really have one for him. I mean, I'd like to. I'd kind of like to, comment on how he has gotten on TV several times, losing his cool, but I know he's not proud of that.
Sure.
He's a passionate guy. Kevin Doran's like that. Right. I mean, I've been like that, before, and sometimes people tend to catch us at our worst moments, and
that's what they're hoping for.
Yeah, that's what they're hoping for.
Finally, Kettler's
That's
losing
what we've been
it.
sitting here for 3 hours trying to get out of you.
Right, right. But I know I've seen.
Now cry.
I know I've seen Michael pretty spun up on the television before. He's a passionate team owner.
And if you guys finally do work together, we can take all the credit.
Right.
Yeah, that's us. Yeah, well, we fixed Racer.
We made that deal
We
happen.
fixed Racer.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
We made
but he's always run a good program.
Kettler MSR.
Yeah. Right.
All right. So,
but he has really his car. I mean, he shows up with quality. Quality program all the time.
Deal. So.
Yep. No, I'm pleased for it. I'm pleased for it to be where it is. I'm pleased for you to be part of it, and we'll be pleased to race you guys. I mean, that's going to be, the more better boutique branded cool stuff we get on the racetrack, it's better for all of us.
We're way short on time, but there's a couple key things that I do want to get into. That's actually an interesting point that you make. So you guys have literally 11 or 12 BOP calls you have to get onto a year. You obviously have an appreciation to look at the 488 and go, yeah, they did a nice job. If you had, say, 1-2 BOP adjustments a year and then just had to sort of out-engineer yourself to get up to competing with the 488, let's say that was the overdog car of the year. Are you cool with that? I mean, you have to represent Audi. You have to sell GT3 cars. You're involved in all of the business sides of the current customer nature of GT racing. When people say, like, what happened to the good old days and when you just had to sort of elevate your game and make the car faster, where do you stand on something like that? Because you actually have to sell these cars, so you know the expense and where that number is as far as what people just won't go for anymore.
Well, I mean, it's a very slippery slope, Sean, to get on an arms race. Yeah. And that's the really hard thing to define. Sure. Is what you can define as progress versus, a technology race that is just going to price you out of.
Well, especially because you're a customer-driven organization. Right. So if these GT3 cars are $3 million to get out there, it's not going to make sense.
It doesn't work. Yeah. It doesn't work. I mean, I have a great appreciation for the homologation, even though it takes a lot of the imagination out of the job. You can still do the job. I mean, if you're a would-be designer that wants to work on rear wings for flexible rear wings for Formula One cars, the GT3 deal is not your thing. But if you're a small company or a small prep shop or an owner or somebody that's going to use it to promote your own company or whatever, it's absolutely the right tool, because you can not predict, but you can broadcast pretty well into the expenses of it. The parts and the stuff that you invest in, the intellectual property, the software, the knowledge, and so forth that you bring to your own car, running your own car, it's fairly stable in the fact that next year it's not all going to shift. Yep. You're not all going to have to be on a different ECU, or suddenly you've got to push to pass, or you've got a different aero package. The Grand Am and the stuff before that, really hurt us in terms of creating lots of redundant stuff that nobody. I have a whole semi-trailer full of Grand Am spoilers, wheels, wings, and so forth, and it's absolutely sick. I mean, it's probably $200,000 worth of stuff that is just ornaments.
Got nowhere to go. Right?
It's ornaments, and I can't sell it because there's too many liabilities in it. I can't throw it away because my my country boy in me just can't throw a wing in the trash can.
Yeah,
you
right,
know,
right.
I can't do that, but I can't sell it to anybody. I can't allow it to show up on somebody's Honda Prelude.
Right.
You know,
Which
and
would be fun if it did.
Right.
Yeah, well, no, it really wouldn't be, because if if that thing has an accident, it gets traced back.
But
to
if
us.
you're the 15th person to put out hashtag Brad Kettler rules,
right, maybe
Actually.
yeah.
But
You want to give some away?
We can get rid of some stuff for
Oh,
you.
I'm sure
we
you
can,
could.
we can raise your profile.
I've
there.
got 80 wheels in that
Wow.
trailer that are all BBS 3-piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when was the last time you saw somebody racing on BBS 3-piece?
Yeah.
This was a Grand Am directive.
Oh,
We
yeah.
had to
Yeah.
build
Yeah.
those wheels.
Yeah.
Those were old
Dumb.
in the 80s.
That was dumb. Yeah.
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 So
Dumb.
these things don't help us all
Right.
in the motor racing world. What does help us is if you buy a $491,000 Audi GT3 car, that you know that you're going to be able to use it for 2 to 3 years, if not longer.
Right.
You're able to use it all over the world.
Yeah. Right.
Any spare you buy, chances are 9 out of 10 it's not going to change.
Yeah.
So from that point of view, it allows us to bring racing to a lot more people without making their appearance a blip in time.
So you sort of see it as a necessary evil to
I
keep
do.
sustainable costs.
I do.
for
If you want to
customer-based
work
teams.
in this kind of racing, you have to resolve yourself to the fact that maybe that true creative imagination is not there.
Yeah, there's
You know,
another place for
There's
that.
another
Yeah,
place for
sure.
it, and but yet good business can be made.
Yeah,
Good competition can be had.
Absolutely.
And good value can be created.
yeah. So we're beyond
Yeah,
short on time.
yeah.
But speaking of budgets, I don't think we can leave without trying to get some sort of amazing P1 budget story. And feel free to tell me I'm wrong. Like,
I'd just be curious to know what the number is.
Yeah, what
Not
is the
exactly,
number?
but
Like,
like
yeah.
between X and Y. Like,
Well,
I'm just
you know what?
curious, like-
You know what, guys? Not to be cagey on this, but honestly, I probably can't really speak to it very well because I never saw an invoice.
Sure.
sure.
You know, when you're you're inside those factory programs,
I don't know what our
You-
budget is.
yeah,
back
you-
there. I have
yeah.
no clue.
you don't really see
Right.
what it is. I mean, there's no invoice in the box that you get
Right.
with the developmental brake pads.
Right.
Yeah.
You just get them.
Last thing I have is I need that Lena Gade number. I'm gonna need that
Yeah.
cell phone number. What do you got, Sean? You good?
I'm not going with that. Yeah, I'm gonna get myself in trouble.
All right. Well, normally we'd say Continental's got the check, but you guys provided the hospitality.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
invoice Continental's Sherry Herman. Here's her
Yeah,
address.
Sherry.
And,
Okay, it was an expensive pot of chili.
yeah.
Yeah. No, we appreciate it, guys. Thanks for coming out here in the country.
Thank you, sir.
I'm finished.
Wow, that was such a great episode. That guest really knew how to tell a story.
Well, good, Ryan Eversley. I'm glad that you sat here with me as we went through it and you approve of this Brad Kettler episode.
You're welcome, Sean. I'm right here.
All right. Thanks to Brad for taking the time with us. It is amazing how much he reminds me of myself, except for the fact that he's successful. So, anyway, we'll get out of here. And actually, keeping the love with music within the paddock, we're going to turn over to some music from a good friend of mine, a guy named Kyle Leo, who anybody within sort of the IMSA paddock knows the name. Kyle's been can't call him a truck driver, but he's a mechanic that drives a truck. It's a very specific term he likes to have, who's been around. But Kyle is part of a great band called Suspects. They are available on SoundCloud, and here's one sample of theirs called You Got Everything.